I have appeared at numerous Board of Health meetings that are held at 8 a.m. in the morning once a month to ask that the staff of the health department please consider implementing some of my ideas. And this has unfortunately not occurred for the most part. I have spoken with Mr. Weeks, who is our new epidemiologist, and we will continue our discussion because I'm very happy he is on board. But again, I'm a news hound and I have not seen creative ways to educate the public. Secondly, as a citizen in Norwalk, I have attempted to go to various public venues. I've decided to wear a mask, a KN95 mask. But I have seen a lot of disparity or differences between who's wearing a mask, who isn't, which restaurant servers are wearing a mask, which ones are not. So I'm asking tonight that you seriously consider this, and I will be asking this of the mayor and others, that we in Norwalk reinstitute the mask mandate at this time, but with the proviso that there be a very vigorous and better and creative public outreach and education program alongside of it, including having signage at our very creative vaccine locations. And I have complimented the staff on their very creative ways to get this vaccine and the boosters out. But on the masking and the social, which is really physical distancing, not so much. And life is short. And that is why I decided to speak tonight. I would like us to press the reset button, and I'm available, as I've always been, to speak with you offline about how we can positively reiterate, including having the potential of citizens who volunteer to be COVID courtesy ambassadors, to gently talk to people when they see them entering places. But without this mask mandate in place, I ask that our city be the brave ones and ensure that it's not a political decision. I do not agree with the governor's discussion. I don't think it's fair that the governor is letting layman business owners in our city and beyond to decide science. That is the job of government. And I have said this to the Board of Health as well. So I'm asking that Norwalk be a leader and Norwalk be brave and reinstitute mask mandates, especially in light of the fact of how close we are to New York and New York City.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Ms. Lorcella. I'd like to state on the record that I believe that's Heidi Alterman, not me, joining at 7:15.
Yes, it's Heidi. I'm so sorry. I'm here.
All is good. No, it shows up as my name. So for the record, thank you very much. Heidi Alterman.
That's strange. Okay.
Is here. Yes. Well, thanks very much, Ms. Lorcella, for your comments. I'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the minutes from our meeting held on September 15th, 2021. So for our new council members, they may abstain from that. Do I have, would someone like to move these minutes? Diana? Councilwoman Revolus, I'm remembering our formalities. Thank you. All right, great. Any edits, changes, additions, corrections? I have several. Any? No? I see no hands. So that would be, I have 7 of them. Is it appropriate for me to do this now, or shall I send these? I'll do these now. Okay, so we're ready. First of all, on the first page, my name is missing an I, D-O-M-I-N-I. On the first page, that's under the attendance, and on the first page as well, under page 2, approval of the minutes, Mr. Burnett's name is spelled without an E. Then on page 3, I believe it should say, and this is toward the top, it says Mr. Burnett asked if COVID testing was still free. It goes on to say, I believe it should be required by their employer and may not be able to afford. If that makes sense, Councilmember Burnett.
I'm not quite following your first.
Oh, sure.
Your first comment about my name.
Oh, your name. Yes. On page 1, there's an extra 5E at the
No,
end.
no, no, that was the way it was in the previous minutes, and my corrections to the
I see.
July
Oh, I'm
minutes
sorry. My
were
apologies. There you go.
corrected, so.
I thought it happened again, so we're good.
No,
All right. All right, well, we've sorted that then. So strike that.
right,
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember Burnett. So I did see though on page 3, the top of the page, required by their employer and may not be able to afford the frequent testing. On page 4, I believe it says under, I believe it's the third paragraph. It should be a meeting under Ms. Revolus said that she had spoken with an organization that attended a meeting. If that's fair, Councilwoman Revolus. On the same page, page 4, Lieutenant Dinho's name is misspelled. It should be Dinho. Also on page 4, under B, presentation, I assume it should say presentation of Family Navigator Program, the of being added there. And last but not least, on page 4 as well, there should be overview. Mr. Daniels introduced Ms. Escalera, who would give an overview of the Navigator Program. And I believe that's it. Okay. Got those? All right. So now we have a motion on the floor. We need to have a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Does anyone want to? Councilwoman Revolus, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay. Councilwoman Ayers, you can use the raise hand function if you like.
Abstain.
Abstain, very good. Councilwoman Alterman, would you like to approve or abstain? Oh, you're abstaining as well. So approve.
I raised
Any
my hand,
opposed?
sorry.
Okay, so that means we have 2, 3, 4, 5 approvals, 2 abstentions, 0 opposed. All right, very good. All right, moving on, we have.
Madam Chair, if I may make
Oh,
a
yes,
comment,
Mr.
I
Green.
have to
Councilman.
leave the meeting.
Okay,
I have to leave for candlelight. Sorry about that.
not an apology. Have fun, Councilmember Keegan.
Okay, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Okay, guys, see you later. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, number 4, we have approved the Community Services Committee meeting dates for 2022. That was in the packet and the backup. Any questions, comments about this? Ready to ask for someone to move this for approval? Councilwoman Smith, thank you very much. I don't believe we need to second this, right? We're not seconding. All right, so great. All in favor? For approving these dates, these meeting dates. And Councilwoman Ayers as well. You can use that raise hand if you like.
Approve.
Approved, thank you very much. That means it is unanimous approval of the meeting dates. Thank you all very much. All right, so we've hit the discussion portion, the discussion items for our evening. We will have 3. I'm going to move to remove or just ask to remove 5D. Any objections to that removal? No? Seeing none, that means we will start with 5A, an overview of the department structure and current projects. And for that, I'm very happy to turn that over to our Chief, Lamont Daniels. Thank you, Chief, for presenting this information and overview for us this evening for both new and returning members.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Can everyone see that? Great. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair, and also welcome our new council members. So I don't know you all formally, but I just wanted to reintroduce myself. And also, because it's a public meeting, I always like to reintroduce myself to our community, because oftentimes once this is publicized on YouTube, we also like to use this opportunity to remind Norwalkers of the variety of services and resources that are available and how to contact them. So I had a conversation, Madam Chair Johnson and I met and thought it would be a good time to give a really broad overview of what is Community Services Department. So my goal is to share the large departments during the reorg that happened, what that looks like. I recognize that some of our seasoned council folks, this may be a refresher, but also I've added some new slides and thought about how to talk about it. So I think everyone will find it both refreshing and new. Madam Chair, I kind of, with all three points, I kind of have the slide that moves. So if you want me to break in between, just let me know, because I didn't prepare it in that sense, but I most certainly, through you, if I need to break, just tell me break, because I didn't,
Very good.
I just make sure I
appreciate that.
covered the points as opposed to the way it was written in the agenda.
Very good.
So I thought it was important to add this slide because when we think about municipal government in terms of the role it plays in the community, there are three models that government plays. And when I started thinking about talking today, I included this slide. And so number one, there is the eternal service delivery, which is where the government, the city of Norwalk, administers services. And I'll talk about that a little bit, that there are some specific services that the city of Norwalk administers, meaning we own, our employees dedicate 100% of their time to those services. And I have a few that I'll talk about that a little bit. Now, again, as we talked at the top of the discussion, this is in no means the entire department. We will be here till 11, 12, but just give you an overview of what and how the structure is. But also I want to also reiterate, I would love to meet and have a sit down with our new common councilman so I can really do a deeper dive and talk with you and share how the department is forming, what is those service delivery points that we do. So number one is the service delivery of what the city does. You know, city taxpayers pay our salaries, and these are the services that we implement. But then the second one is through contractual, whether through governments that we talk about the health department, the state department of health, contracts provides grant funding for our health department to provide services. And as we all know, through COVID, we're providing many services. That is a contract, that is a grant that we apply for, and we become that subcontractor to provide those specific services here in the city. And then you also see the municipal agent for the elderly. Again, not to, try to cover everything, but there are some state statutes that requires municipalities to provide certain services. So one of those examples is municipal agent for the elderly, where the state statute says that each municipality town should have a municipal agent for the elderly and fund that individual or entity to provide services for low-income seniors. So that is a contract that the city of Norwalk provides, and we subcontract it out. In this case, it's Family Children's Agency, and then Head Start and WIC that I can go into it more, but those are some examples. And then there's number three, the joint delivery arrangement, where the city has a role. In this case, community services has a role, but we don't own the entire program. We don't own the entire service delivery. And I'll talk a little bit about the family navigation program and our care coordination of services. And I think this is just as important, both, internally and then from a public perspective, of the three ways that government plays or provides services. And the other point is that in the city of Norwalk, because every city is structured or governed and the charter is a little bit different, we tend to do a little bit more of the 2 and 3 and a little bit of the number 1. So the question becomes why? Well, it's resources and the capacity to provide some of those services. And also that in the city of Norwalk, there's a robust level of nonprofits. And, not to get into detail, because there's so much to cover, that as you all know, Norwalk doesn't have this robust social service delivery program like many other municipalities have. And we can talk about that when we do our one-on-one. So when I got on board, I started thinking about, then given the capacity and the resources and what we have, what should the department as a whole be focusing on? And I would like to offer this statement, which is the vision, Community services envisions a community where all residents have access to knowledge and information about programs and resources and the ability to access them. That's something the city can own. That's something the city can do. Again, in the city of Norwalk, the nonprofits really do the heavy lifting and is that safety net. The city does not have any jurisdiction to say, this is how you provide that service, this is how you should do. Because in Connecticut, those contracts are directly with the state. It doesn't mean the city should not speak out to ensure those services are administered well. And in my department, we do that. We bring a lot of those services together and talk about how can we help, what do you need, and become a partner to help move those services along to ensure that to the extent that we can, our Norwalkers are served with the best possible services and what's available. I think would it be important, especially to our new council folks, this is the org structure. And this org structure comes from the reorg, where we align like departments under one community services. And then I've been here for a little bit over 2 years now. So I like to think of the department as now a toddler. I have a 1-year-old, he's walking. So we're kind of walking. My son is fumbling when he walks, he bumps into the walls. And I think it's a good parallel process. We're learning, we're building the programs that already existed before the reorg are moving. We're looking at those programs, but we're also identifying where else can the city intervene, support, and provide. But specifically looking at those 3 areas, you know, what particular programs can we own? And that may mean we need to identify resources. Where can we contract? That means if there's a state statute, we're obligated by state statute to support these activities. So we have to pay for those activities. And then the other number 3 is that contractual. And that's where we look for either grants or just identify supports to help our community. So under the community services, I oversee human services. And as you can see to the left, and I'm going to talk about a few of those things because some of the things are new. And the human services is the newest. We hired a human services director when I arrived. I don't know if the committee knows, unfortunately, Maria Escalera, who was the human services director, she has since resigned. And so we are now out promoting a new position. So those that are watching, you know, please go on to the city's website. And if you meet the qualifications, we'd love to interview you. So we are presently without a human services director at this moment, but we have put it out to look for an individual. So, and again, you have it, and what I will actually send this slide deck to you after the meeting. This is an internal document, so I did not submit it as a backup because this is not a public document in that sense. So there's the Community Resource Hub that I'm going to highlight tonight. There's the Family Navigation Program that I'm going to highlight tonight. When you see senior services, that's the municipal. Excuse me, that's the municipal agent for the elderly. I'm in my house and I have no water. My throat's getting dry. Excuse me. And I'm home alone. So the municipal agent for the elderly, we contract those services to FCA. Early childhood, Mary Oster is the city's early childhood coordinator. She's part of the early childhood council, and this is the role we ensure that our little ones get that early education so they can be ready for kindergarten and have a great success in school. And then our youth services department, I'll talk a little bit. You'll see an asterisk at Fair Housing. Fair Housing is the department within the city, but because of the consent decree and there's a historical contact with that, it's an independent department. But because it does serve our community, I do include it in terms we talk about what are the services and resources that the city provides. Things that I directly provide is an ELL mental health support. That's our English language learners. For those that recall, 2.5 years ago, when Norwalk was engaged with quite a few unaccompanied minors, the city stepped in and partnered with the Norwalk Public Schools, and we help provide mental health services for those youngsters. So that's a grant that is funded through the city, through the Community Services Department. Food Access Coalition. Many of you, especially those the food programs that emanated during our height of COVID, we organized, we owned it, and we facilitated the human services food program. And then the Community Impact Program. This is a new program. The city There's a historical piece to that as well, that the city had an open process where there were some dollars where the city would help support nonprofits throughout the city. Again, since this reorg, since my department, that program is now under me, and we're looking at how to organize it, how to automate it, and just looking at how do we use those fundings, but also identifying priorities, impact, and then what are the metrics. So that's an area that we're working on. Human Relations and Fair Rent, which is an existing program prior to my arrival, that also now falls under under community services. I want to highlight Fair Rent. That's the program that often is our most active, and it's an amazing program for those who are watching. That if you feel your landlord has taken advantage of you by improper increase in rent, or they want to increase the rent but the heat's not working, there is a formal process that residents of Norwalk can to come to reach out to the city, and there is a commission that has binding authority, and that commission will hear that complaint, and they can rule whether or not that rent is proper, is adequate, is market rate, or make a determination that the landlord cannot raise that rent with some stipulations, that other things that have to be done. I'm also excited, Sherelle. Oh, by the way, and Anna Keegan, who was the director or interim director, has also left. So that's an open position. So there are quite a few open positions in the department that we are hiring, and also an opportunity, again, with the reorg, to look at giving what's happening, giving COVID. COVID has taught us a lot. What should we be doing, and what should that configuration and structure look like? So while I don't have a staff person, it also gives us an opportunity to look at how can we make this more relevant, and or look at the restructuring to make it to decide what's best, and how do we use the resources we have to support our residents in that particular area. This is also a city ordinance. So of course, when it's an ordinance, we have to make sure that we fulfill our ordinance obligations when some of these positions are ordinance, specifically to the Human Relations and Fair Rent Commissions. Can't just arbitrarily just make a change. If we want to make something significant, we would have to go through that formal process. And then the libraries. We have two libraries. Our main library on Belden in South Norwalk. Sherelle Harris is the library director. She reports to me as well. And the library has just risen to the occasion, not only as a place for people to read and all the different resources. Many of we have implemented COVID testing at the library. We also have vaccines at the library. So really looking at and reimagining with Sherelle's leadership the role of the library as a community resource and a hub and the community. And Sherelle has just done an amazing job thinking about that and beginning to implement what that looks like. Of course, under the confines of COVID, that's always the thing, but Sherelle leads that. And then you all are familiar with Deanna Diamore. She is the city's health director. And this is the structure Deanna reports to me. We have environmental health services. So there are quite a few mandated services by state statute or city ordinance that we are committed to doing. We also have clinical services. So we do laboratory testing with our water, and we have a sexual health clinic, lead. And so again, want to encourage an opportunity to sit down with you all to really do a deep dive in what are those different services. We also have the emergency preparedness program lives in the health department, which has met hundreds. And I know Councilman Greg Burnett participates in that. And I'm not sure if any others, but they just do an amazing job. They have been the boots on the ground to promote our vaccine. And while there are many other partners providing vaccines, whether in the retail or our partners from our community health centers, the health department also has taken the leadership to manage the vaccine program here in our city, using both our community partners and our health staff as well. And then Teresa Argandesi is the city's health system director under health and education, just promoting a lot of health education and promotion. There's a variety of programs that she do, both community-wide, but also working with our schools. And Teresa helps with some of our local community gardens in the community, promoting our young people to eat healthy, et cetera. And then, of course, the health operations here in the city of Norwalk. We actually are in our budget season right now. So as a whole, there are about anywhere between like 90 to 100 part-time, full-time employees that fall under the entire community services department. Are there any questions before I go to the next slide? I'll move on because I know we want to keep it going. But again, you will have this slide deck. So how do we show up in the community? There's a youth advisory board, and I put not ordinance because when people thought it was an ordinance. And this is really, we want to engage our community. This is a partnership. I come from the perspective the city can and should not be doing everything. And when the city can take a step out and provide a service, we want to engage our community to help us think through what is the best way to provide these services. We want to be culturally sensitive. We want to be culturally relevant, but we also want to make sure the services we buy, the services we provide or offer, are they relevant? You can have a good program, but if residents don't come, that's something we need to look at. But we're also in constant conversation with our nonprofit community. You should also know that I'm very sensitive that, under Mayor Rowling administration, that we always take a look at who's doing those activities, because what can happen is the city can directly be in competition with other nonprofits, and that's not the role we want to take. We don't want to compete for those same dollars. What we want to do is strengthen and see what role can the city enhance. We also provide a community providers bi-weekly call. Some of you know that. This was something new under my leadership. Over 60, 70 organizations meet every other Friday. This is where we talk about what are those services? What are we doing? How can we help? And we really talk about how can we show up and how can we collectively support our community in a lot of ways, from children to our seniors. There's also a senior provider. I also facilitate the Senior Providers Network. So what that means is all our elderly programs in the city, I don't fund most of them, but we come together as a city to figure out how do we support one another and how do we ensure that the community knows where those services are and how do we work with each other. Hey, I'm open Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Well, we'll open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and so forth, and just have that collective conversation. I talked a little bit about the Food Insecurity Network. We are restarting the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. This was in existence prior, kind of fell off, and Darlene Young, who's our youth program development, will be restarting that. The Early Childhood Council, we also fund this. That Mary participates. The Mayor Summer Youth Employment Initiative, I'll talk about that a little bit more. It's a summer program. We have aspirations to make it more long-term, and how do we engage our young people throughout the school year. And our Systems of Care Collaborative, it was defunct. So I think what the big takeaway that I would like to share with you all, that because of this reorg, that this gives us an opportunity to look at what was, what is, what should be revisited, but then how can we improve the service delivery system throughout the city? And again, the city doesn't provide a lot of resources, but what we do provide is capacity to think, capacity to convene, and the capacity to advocate and support the work that's already happening on the ground. Mental health, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. We're very interested in the mental health services. As you all know, COVID has just exacerbated many of the concerns that many of us know so very well, but how can we promote using the city's assets to encourage or amplify the resources? Something that's new is the Workforce Development Collaborative under my leadership. That's an area that I have an interest, so that kind of falls under those current new projects. Currently, the city Norwalk community doesn't have a infrastructure for workforce development. What do I mean? So when new employees come to the city, how do we, entreat them to say, hey, we want to make sure you hire Norwalk residents. I'm really excited that in the next year and in the, I don't want to be too premature, but there's some great things kind of nurturing that I think, we as a city can be very proud to start supporting workforce development here in the city of Norwalk. As you all know, we are a very strong partner with Norwalk Acts, where I kind of think we're joint at the hip and promote and support the collective act. Norwalk is a collective impact city, and the city is very active and engaged. And then our Healthy Life Project. what makes us unique is that, we can rally the community to address issues. For example, my first 3 months in, when the accompanied minors, then those number really increased, we were able to garner over 30, 40 people in a room to talk about how can we help and how could we respond? How do we welcome our youngest residents and wrap around supports around them? Our Afghan community response just recently pulled over, 20 providers with the school system to talk about that when and if the Afghan residents may be located or placed in our community. How do we support them? What should we be doing? And what does that mean? These are leadership roles that the community services department plays. And then our school partnerships, just identifying ways through the org chart you saw, our health department, the youth services. I'm developing a very strong partnership with the new superintendent. We're starting to meet more regularly to see how can we align some of the things that we're doing with the school. Just recently, my office was very instrumental in garnering mental health support in addition to the school support services that they already offer. My office led the community response, identifying mental health clinicians throughout the city from the nonprofit community, and they showed up strong to support the work that was happening in the school during these trying times, specific around what just happened in the past month. So these are examples of how the city shows up, how we play a role in the larger community to support our community. Any questions? Youth services, this is a big one. This is kind of, this falls under that kind of current structure. Again, part of the reorg is to think of these departments not working in silos. And I'll be very transparent. That's a work in progress. You have departments that have been in existence for 30, 40 years and getting us all to see how do we align the work, how do we share resources, et cetera. But what I can tell you that as a whole, this is how I'm thinking about youth services. And you see the Youth Services Bureau, the Department of Health, the Norwalk Public Library, Parks and Recs. So we're doing youth service programming, but we didn't come together. So that's a piece that's happening. And moving the train together to think about all the youth services. Again, going back to that original slide around 1, 2, and 3, what service deliveries that we own, and if they're in our departments, how do we from department to department to come together? And that's happening. Our individualized care coordination, that's new. Prior to here, the city used to provide mental health services. We no longer provide mental health services. There were a blue ribbon report that outdated my tenure. And so I'm picking up kind of what is, and thinking about how do we move kind of in 2021 and beyond. Our summer employment, leadership engagement, leakage, to services, the Women, Infant, and Children's Program. I think this is important to know that while the city provides that service, it's actually a subcontract. And so from the public perspective, you'll just see, the city provides that. But in our actuality, it's actually a subcontract from Optimus Healthcare out of Bridgeport. In this case, the city provides that. What does that mean? In other words, any agency could provide that service, but here in the city of Norwalk, we decide as a municipality that the health department will provide that service. And this predates myself, this predates Deanna. I think it's important as we engage and think through what areas that, this particular committee has interest, is that how the city does this, where did this come from the city, and what is that funding structure? And I think it's important to elevate. And then our teen health, unfortunately, when teens have sexually transmitted diseases, we are the entity that does the testing and all that kind of stuff. And we want to keep those numbers low. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I see Councilmember Burnett has his hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Daniels, the bullet under leadership and civic engagement, is that the Youth Advisory Council?
No, that would be the mayor's youth advocacy. I don't know the name. The mayor's the mayor's youth advisory council, because then there's the youth advisory board, which is made up of the professionals. Yes.
So what's the role of the Youth Advisory Council?
So this is the mayor's youth advocacy. The Mayor's Youth Advisory, I keep on saying advocacy because that's my other job. So the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, this is a group that was formed. It kind of fell off because of just staff commitment. It's pulling together youth and weigh into what's happening in the city. So one of the vision that Darlene has is that they would have, periodic meetings with the mayor, kind of talk to from a youth perspective, how they feel about the city, and when possible and when appropriate, when it makes sense, we want to hear from them. I think this also addresses that larger equity. The youth should have input in their city. They live here, and they can make some recommendations, support. So it's an advisory role, and they know that, but it's important to provide a pathway to nurture new leaders, nurture the next generation of common councilors and so forth. So there's an educational component, and then there's an engagement component of understanding city government and advocacy in their city.
So it's just starting up again. So they haven't set a process in terms of who they select, what youth they select to serve on that advisory council.
This has been defunct for several years. So Darlene is just kind of taking this back, and we're figuring out what the new structure, lessons learned from previous times, and how then to sustain this, whoever's not here.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Oh, certainly. Yes.
Well, I'll take this opportunity, Mr. Daniels, if folks have questions. Otherwise, we can keep moving into as you mentioned, like the next two items, B and C as well. Appreciate that very much, Mr. Daniels.
Yes. Again, a lot of activities. I know Councilwoman was like, just give us a little bit. I'm like, I can't give a little bit. But again, there's many activities, and again, we'll love to have those continued conversations. But this is a major change. This goes to that update or new projects. So this is that under my leadership, the Youth Services Reimagined. So some of these activities we do, but some of this is aspirational. But as you all know, it's important to start articulating it, creating a plan down, building a map, and then kind of figuring out how do we get there. So and then Maria Escalier was very instrumental. So these are what we call the 5 pillars of the city's youth services department, which is also the designated youth services borough. So I'm not going to go over everything, but the pillars are restorative justice. The city operates the Juvenile Review Board. So going back to that original slide where the city provides that service delivery, we administer the Juvenile Review Board. And that's the program where young people who have trouble in school, doesn't meet that threshold, for court, and because we changed the laws, this is an intervention, this is a diversion program, because we don't want young people who are getting in trouble for spray paint room going to court, because the research tells us that once they get involved in the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system, that pipeline begins. So this is a diversion program. The city runs that program. So that's significant to know that we own and operate and administer that program. Whereas in other municipalities across the state, it's subcontracted with nonprofits. And again, you'll hear me talk about that a lot, where the city runs it in Norwalk, it's a nonprofit in another municipality, or vice versa. The city runs it in another municipality, that's actually contracted out with the nonprofit, but the contract is not with the city, it's with the state. And it gets complicated on the back end. But for those that, really want to do that deep dive, I think I would love to have that conversation, because it does get confusing. Sometimes I get confused. Do we own that or do we not own that? Because that's just the structure here in the city of Norwalk. But information and referral, community education, advocacy and leadership, Councilman Burnett, that's the Mayor's Youth Council, Youth Advisory Board. And then you notice I put Parks as partners. The Parks Department is not a part of community services, but you all know the Parks Department runs a quite few of youth programming. Well, we should be talking, and I met the new Parks Director, and even under the former Parks Director, Nick Roberts, we started having those conversations, and again, identifying how can we work together, those alignments, those energies, and I'm really excited. I just can't remember his name right now with the new Parks Director. He's just picking up, and we're starting to have those conversations. So more to come specific around how do we as a city align kind of what is that youth strategy for the city of Norwalk. So that's really exciting. I think this is the last slide that I'll move on to some other things. The Family Navigation Program. This is a new program. This was funded by, facilitated by the Dalio Foundation with funding from the Ritter Foundation, Ritter Family Foundation, and the Pierre and Astrid Heinrich Foundation. And we're just so excited that they have committed to the city of Norwalk funding to do this. What is the Family Navigation Program? It was originally designed as an immediate response of COVID. As you all know, our students were home. And so we knew that students needed support. And through the funding, both from the city and the Dallas Foundation, over 1,000 students were able to get internet. And so how the city stepped in is that we approached the funders to say, if families and students need internet, we're wondering if there's other services that they need. So that was an assumption. And we tested that, and we've learned that absolutely, that the 95% of the families who needed internet support, meaning the Dalio Foundation paid for the internet, and that program is still happening, they needed other supports. And some of the former committee is aware, helping families, and it's just that, helping families navigate. Where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? As simple as it may sound, from a resident perspective, when you're overwhelmed, when you're stressed, when you're new to the city, when you're new to the country, that can be a lot to handle. So this service was formed. We worked directly with the school counselors, the school social workers. Again, the superintendent has embraced this. And now we have expanded to the community. You'll see at the bottom, and we'll be promoting on our social media, that any resident can call the 854-7999 and just say, I need some help me understand where to go. And we have our family navigation staff can help them figure it out. And we'll stay with you until you get that support. This is not just go to agency A, B, and C. We'll stay with you up to 90 days to make sure that you get that service. Because as we learn, it's one thing to just give information. We want to make sure that the resident is connected. And so what makes us different is that the family navigators will stay with that family up to 90 days because, it's stressful. And we've served about over 400 families last year. So we have a perspective of what family needs, what is those themes, and how do we shift to make sure we're meeting those needs. I think this is the big last one. Then and this is something I want to thank the former committee, because you all were strong advocates and helped me pull this off the ground. Because if you all remember, 2 years ago when I first got here, I started talking about this. So we're building. Things take time, and so the Community Resource Hub it's up and running. That same number, 203-854-7999. I am hiring a part-time community resource specialist. So we haven't done a lot of promotion, but I can tell you we've probably already interacted with over 300 residents without advertising. How is that happening? Well, if people feel good about the service, they're going to tell their family and friends. So word of mouth is very, very powerful. We do plan to promote, but until I hire that other part-time person, I don't think it's a wise idea to promote, and then this one person is overwhelmed. But this is a service that I have aspirations to build over time, over the years, to really become that go-to place. This was launched when I first came to the city. For those that are new, I literally met with many, just not all of the executive directors throughout the city, and asked how and when can the city show up? And this is what was heard. In the city of Norwalk, while there are a variety of robust services in the community, there's no one centralized location from a resident perspective. Where can I go? My colleague Jennifer at Norwalk like to think about it as a hyper-local 211. This is not to take away from 211. What makes this unique? There's a live person that will, again, take your call and help you figure out. The family navigation focus on families and children. The Community Resource Hub focus on all Norwalkers, seniors, individuals. I need help. Where do I go? Help me with this. I failed to mention, both from the Family Navigation and the Norwalk Community Service Resource Hub, again, what makes this unique, being relevant and hearing what the community is saying. You can come in and make an appointment, and we'll walk you through. This is where you go. We've actually had the Family Navigator create a map. This is where you go for this. Because again, the population that we serve, really need help and oftentimes really need hand-holding. And I don't want to understate the language barriers. About over 85% of the residents we serve are either Spanish speaking, and we're starting to see an increase in Haitian Creole speaking. And so for someone that has English as their dominant language, and I'm really excited that we have bilingual Spanish, we're looking for a Haitian Creole family navigator, and I hope we can find one coming in, sitting down with the family navigation or the community resource hub specialist and really walk them through. Bring your applications. Some of you are providers. Sometimes those applications can be like 20 pages. That can be very overwhelming and stressful. Well, come in and we'll help you fill out. We can't fill it out for you, but we can at least help walk you through it, or we can help you understand. So these are the services that we provide for often our most vulnerable, our seniors, or those that just say, I just need someone to talk to help me figure out what are those services during their most time of need. Yes.
Excuse me, Madam
Yes.
Chair, Mr. Diaz, can you
yes.
just go back one more? I might have missed something that you said, and I do apologize in advance. You're saying that this is a service that we already provide, or a service that we are trying to develop to provide?
This is a service that is in what I would call a soft launch. So I have a hired part-time person. I'm hiring another one, but because because of our nonprofit community, we have promoted through the nonprofits. So we are seeing residents now, but not at the citywide, because I'm not ready to promote it citywide. And we've already served 300 through word of mouth.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, if you do not mind, sir. Is the slowness of launching this full out, is it a reason why we're not a full out launch? Because this seems like a very big need, particularly for the elderly community. So is it a reason why we're not fully launching it, or is there something else going on?
Well, resource in the sense that I'm hiring and it takes a while to get someone on staff.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ayers. And any other questions for Mr. Daniels before he moves on to the next slide? I assume we're kind of transitioning into the American Rescue Plan Act work.
Yes, I have one more slide before that.
Oh, good. I'm always getting ahead of you. All right.
That's
there we go.
okay.
All right,
That's okay.
Keep going then.
So for former colleagues, thank you again for your support, because you also helped advocate for the swing space, because I had to go before you all to get the contract signed. So one of the things, and you know, many of you already know this, that one of the things that I've learned here in the city of Norwalk, and it's unfortunate that over the years we've lost some services. I guess I'll just put it that way, in the sense that the services exist, but they do not physically exist in the city of Norwalk. For example, workforce development. The workplace programs are often held in Bridgeport and Stamford. And so again, understanding the needs of the community, talking with residents, I've heard very loud and clear that, yeah, I know the service exists, but you know, for some families or some individuals, traveling to Bridgeport and Stamford, that could be costly, you know, $6, $7, you know, because again, families all have different needs. So I'm excited, and through your support, that the city, we offer swing space. So this is an ongoing program where services that cover the city of Norwalk, my job is to ask them, can they hold office hours in City Hall, so that Norwalkers don't have to travel to neighboring communities like a Stamford or Bridgeport to get those services. I'm excited to say that we do have the Urban League of Southern Connecticut, which is in Stamford. They cover Norwalk, but they're in Stamford. So they operate office hours, several days a week. And their main program now that they're operating in City Hall, where Norwalk can come to City Hall, as opposed to traveling, is the largest program, the Unite CT Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So they still make their appointments, and it's still a Stamford number. But when that resident is in a Norwalk, they'll say, I have swing space, meet me in Norwalk. And that's just been a game changer. For residents who are able to travel to Norwalk, that's great. But again, being responsive to all residents, there are many residents in the population that need these services don't have those additional resources to travel. So we promote those programs. And so what I'm doing now is I'm looking at all other programs that are more regional or based out of the city, and I'm having conversations, can you bring that service here, or can we negotiate maybe one day a week and so forth. So this is an ongoing, ever evolving program. What's important is we have the space. What's important is we have the liability all confirmed, and now it's just really working with these services to encourage them, and so they can see it's worth their while, that bring a staff person to Norwalk. We can assure you that staff person just won't be sitting in City Hall. My department and through our community network can also help promote and make sure that you're seeing residents. So I'm just really excited about that. This is something new, and just again, being responsive within the past year. This happened during COVID. And we want to continue to promote and continue to partner with organizations throughout the region to get them to come serve in Norwalk. And then the larger goal is that if they see they're being served well in capacity, they may want to then revisit having their own space in the community. I can move on, Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay.
I could ask for other questions, but I think we've been getting them along the way. One more perusal here. We're good to move on. And this is about this COVID-19 stimulus.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniels.
Oh, no, thank you. So Madam Chair Johnson also asked me to give this committee an update. If you recall, I don't have the dates. We did a large overview to Common Council. And as you recall, the city has allocated $2 million to what we're calling the Norwalk Community Recovery Fund Grant Program. We have the funding, so we are building the infrastructure, we're building the tools, so we're actually creating a program, so it's all happening in real time. And so under my program in my office, along with myself, Deanna, the Director of Health, and the new Human Services Director, and the department heads, we will lead the charge. So that also includes Sherelle Harris. We don't have a Director of Human Relations and Fair Rent, so that becomes the planning group, if you will. But I'm really excited about this because this gives the city an opportunity to make investments that directly benefit residents. I read the entire 75 pages. It's a federal grant, and most of you, because many of you know, I know a little bit of your background. There are very clear guidelines of how you can use the funding. As was shared in the meeting we had, I think it was in October. These are the following funding opportunities. And for Councilwoman Ayers, I don't know what you can see, but I'll say it just in case. So we're looking to fund programs that mitigate eviction prevention. Norwalk has seen its fair share of that. I get the data. Also through our Fair Rent program, we're also working with our partners, specifically Open Door and Person to Person, our homeless intervention support services. So we will be prioritizing funding for that. A big one, we heard it loud and clear in the community, behavioral and mental health. And that goes from both children up into seniors. So we'll be looking at, again, not the city to provide the services, but doing RFPs, requests for proposals, asking those that provide these services to scale up and see what they can do to support our community. Specifically how it impacts the COVID-19, because there is a precursor. This is not funding to say, I would like to expand my program. It's specifically around how has COVID-19 impacted your ability to serve constituents? And that could be an expansion. We were inundated and we would like to build capacity to meet the need. Well, that is most certainly a criteria of eligibility. Our early education, helping our little ones. I was in a meeting most recently hearing from Mary Oster, and because we have the Early Childhood Council, and this is something I'm learning, our young ones need mental health services. So we'll be looking at doing an RFP to identify providers that would also focus on those little ones and their families. As I alluded to earlier, workforce initiatives. thinking about how do we support those that have lost their jobs. We still have many Norwalkers who are underemployed or unemployed. Again, this is a big program working with a Norwalk Community College, Norwalk Acts, and pulling together those that do provide workforce initiatives. So the city be looking at how can we support. We're not looking, $2 million is not a lot of money in the long stream of things, but how can we use these dollars to encourage additional funding, which is the leveraging, because these are one-time grants. So we have to be thoughtful that if we provide funding, you can't just do with this funding for a year, then the funding shuts down. In my opinion, that defeats the purpose. So we're looking at how can we leverage the funding dollars that we have that can just sustain it. So we'll be looking at nonprofits to also have a sustainability plan. We are forming the application process. Again, we have to build the program. The exciting thing is we're going to be using a new automating software. So it's literally being built as we speak. So there'll be a link that organizations can apply and will do that process where it needs to happen. And then there's just overall organizational support. As an organization, how has COVID-19 impact you? Did you lose revenue? Did you lose support? There's dollars for that. Again, there's only $2 million. So we have to figure out how much we want to allocate under each, but there's support and we're excited to be able to offer something. And then the other piece is youth prevention. We hear a lot about, and just specifically what's been happening now. I'll be hosting a community conversation with our youth providers, with the superintendent, to talk about how do we come together both to help youth in school, but also help young people within the context of their community. So this is a very pivotal moment that the city has this opportunity to not only provide funding, but also what's important to lead the conversation and be a partner. Because when you bring resources to the table, people tend to listen a bit more. And we'll be looking to develop these proposals. We're using our expertise both in the community. The other piece that you should know that for every single item, we have a subject matter expert. So we rely on, whether it's a state partner or a partner that won't be applying, to really provide that subject matter expertise, that as we think about the RFP and as we think about awarding individuals, we have expertise to really help us, approve and finalize funding so that we know that we're making a big impact. We are developing the metrics because we want to know that if this money is used, what's the metrics? How do we measure impact? But also, again, this is like I said, the document is like 80 pages. There's a whole criteria. So you have to use evidence-based practice, and there's a requirement of what kind of practices you can use if you're in a certain zip code. So, I mean, it's again, I don't want to try to simplify it, but there's a whole process that we are obligated to do in the RFP that addresses metrics, what evidence tools you'll be using that we would have to follow, because as you can imagine, there is an extensive reporting requirement. And that's something that I'm committed to helping the organizations. You have to be a 501c3. So there's a lot of rules when you're dispersing federal dollars. I plan to have a technical a webinar prior to this. So we're developing kind of this outline that before we initiate it, similar, but more in detail with anyone that wants to apply. Let's have a Q&A so our community could be in position and understand. You have to be in existence for over 3 years. So this funding is not for startups. If you've been in it, if you're a nonprofit under 3 years, unfortunately, you are not eligible for this funding stream. So there's a lot of eligibility requirements, but also there are also great opportunities to support our residents. I don't remember what's on the next. Okay, so I'll stop there for any questions, and then I'll go to the resources that Madam Chair has asked me to kind of just highlight.
Any questions for Mr. Daniels about the ARPA, the COVID relief funding? Thank you so much for that. And thank you also for a very thorough, but to the point overview of all of the projects and the structure. Appreciate that. And no questions, then we can move on to this last piece, given that we're in the midst of the holiday season. Thanks, Chief.
Sure. So there are a lot of resources, and I'm speaking also directly to the public that we want to amplify. I spoke with Josh Morgan, our communications director. So actually simultaneously, if they haven't gone up at this moment or tomorrow, we will be promoting many of the resources that I'm going to just do a quick overview so that Norwalkers know that you're not alone. I think it's important, both from the committee perspective, that I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So my background is mental health. And I'm very in tune to supporting the mental well-being of our community. And in this role, I've had opportunities because now that we have residents coming into the building to be served, I do make it my business, when appropriate, to greet them, but also talk to them and learn a little bit about their story. And that's what keeps me grounded. People are struggling, from the little ones to the elderly. And so those that are watching into the council, and you'll get this entire slide deck. And I also have given you flyers and different things. And I would encourage the council leaders, for those that are active on Facebook and all the different social media, many of you have done that in the past, to partner and help promote, because we want to get the word out and we want to promote these resources on all mediums. And so while the city will be promoting these on our social media platforms, for those that have their followings and networks, I ask for you to partner with us to also promote. So there's the Norwalk Partnership in the Hub, that there's a website that members of the community can log on. But also I want to highlight, because again, what I've learned is some of our families or residents still don't have access to reliable, adequate internet. So there's an assumption, and unfortunately, we're moving into this automation. So I want to reiterate the number 203-854-7999. That is the city's new community resource number. It's a live person. We made a commitment from 9 to 5. Rarely should that phone go into voicemail. We created a new system that will have 5 people that will have to answer that phone. It'll ring, 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 ring. That was done intentional. I want our residents to know that we are here to serve, and we are making every effort that you can speak to a live person to help you in that moment, as opposed to what we're often accustomed to: press 1 for this, press 2 for this. When you're in need, that can be very discouraging. So again, 203-854-7999. The 211, that is our state system. We are also working in concert to also keep that information up to date. We have a direct relationship with 211. They do serve Norwalk. You can call that number and ask what's happening in Norwalk, but oftentimes that information may be delayed. So this is not to compete with 211. It's a supplement that for Norwalk residents who want to call the 854-799, give us a call. Sometimes we may have to direct you to 211. For example, the homeless, what it's called, the homeless programming now that's happening has been regionalized, and the 211 now owns and operated. So the city does not own and operate that program, neither does the local Open Door, which is our local homeless shelter. You have to go through 211, and they facilitate that whole process. This is very small, but council leaders, you also have our most recent Norwalk food guide. As you all know, Connecticut Food Bank, Connecticut Food Share no longer provides the large mass food program. A great loss. We knew it was ending. We advocated, for 3 more months, and this is how far they can go. But we do have a variety of pantries throughout the city that Norwalk residents can take advantage of. Again, council leaders, you will get this all, and I ask that for those that have a social media, would you be so kind to also promote it to your constituents, so they know that there are services and resources for them. And then lastly, we have two CAP agencies, which are the anti-poverty. They function a little bit differently because they provide different services, which is the Community Action on Park Street, which is in the Human Services Council building, and then the Alliance on Main Street. You also have that. They are the administered agency. Again, going back to that model 1, 2, 3, they have the state contract to administer our energy assistance program. There's a new program for homeowners that can help with water assistance. The message I would like to illustrate today is that many pre-COVID have said, well, I called and I was denied. Because of COVID, the federal government, because oftentimes they regulate the criteria and eligibility, actually has expanded the criteria. So if a resident have called for services and say, I didn't qualify for the energy, what I would encourage you to do is to call again, because because of the expanded criteria, many residents who were denied are now eligible to get that support, especially during the winter season. And again, council leaders, you would also have this information as well to promote, and it will be promoted simultaneously through the city's website. Vaccines, I'm always going to close with vaccines. You can find this information on the city's website through the health department. This is the schedule for the week. As mentioned, I know sometimes there are long lines, so I want to thank Norwalk residents for your patience through the health department, but through our partners. Our partners are doing all that they can. We're trying to be as creative as possible, but also encourage you to look at the retail stores. There are a variety of resources out there. So today is the Wednesday. So tomorrow, the library open from 3 to 6, doing Pfizer and Moderna, J&J. The library also be open. This is at Norwalk Public Library, the main library. They'll be back at Cranberry School. So there's a lot of resources. Got to get in quick. So slots go very, 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 very fast. And we're really excited that Veterans Park, through our partner with Community Health, will be back open at Veterans Park on Saturday. So because I hear, well, I went there at 3, it was closed. Sometimes they do run out. And so we regret that. So try to go there early. When they run out, they do close a little early. Their commitments from 8:30 to 4 while supplies last. And sometimes they'll try to go to other clinics and bring it back. But the supply is high. We're in demand. They are allotted, and even the city, we're allotted a certain amount of vaccines, and we work to administer and be creative and move the clinics in a variety of places. Lastly, I think this is my last slide, and thank you for your patience. I just want to elevate, there is a Norwalk Community Providers bi-weekly call. It's held twice weekly via Zoom. This is open to residents and community providers. For those that would like to participate, if you let us know, call that 854-7999 number, and we can connect you with the link. It is a structured call, but more importantly, you can understand and hear what are those services. And I was talking to Madam Chair, what I would like to do with your approval, that is a very amazing resource that every other Friday we send out. Jasmine provides kind of what's happening in Norwalk for that month. Would love to share that with this committee so you also can be informed of the variety of service, because oftentimes some services some services don't last forever. So this is a way for us to be current and understand that what's available or happening right now in our city. So that's it for me. I want to thank you for your patience in hearing this. But again, would really want to encourage new council leaders. Would love to welcome you to the department and meet with Deanna and I and talk, and I can really do a deep dive of many of the programs and things I have not shared, so you can have a better understanding and be informed of what's happening in Community Services Department. Madam Chair, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Daniels, for this very thorough overview. I especially appreciate the information, especially around the holidays, for folks to have access to those basic needs. And for us, thanks for the call to action for us to share that with our networks. I know we can do we will do that. So any questions from anybody about any of what we've seen tonight? Of course, you can follow up, as Lamont said, or through me, or obviously go directly to Lamont is I think fabulous. I'm always here, but then I have one more question for you all then. I don't want to prematurely ask this question, but I think with no questions and no hands raised, do I have a motion to adjourn? I knew it. Kelsey,
Turned her camera on so she would be
I
ready.
knew it. All right, well, this is it for this year. I'll see you all on the other side in the new year and have wonderful
Thank you
holidays.
so much.
So much.
Thank you. Happy
you. Have a good
holidays.
night.
Thank you,
I
Lamont.
guess we have to vote on that, right? So all,
right.
yeah, opposed, abstained. All right, we're adjourned. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.